When you want to go from Lake Superior to any of the other Great Lakes, you have to go through the Soo locks. And we have previously talked about how to go through the Canadian lock. So this time we're going to show you how we have transited the American lock, which is much bigger and much more imposing. Both of them are a lot of fun. The busy waterway that flows from Lake Superior to Lake Huron is called the St. Mary's River. The freighter traffic here is heavy, and that often affects when you can pass through the American locks because the Lakers and ocean-going vessels have priority in the big locks. So after you contact the American locks control tower on your VHF, you may be asked to stand by and wait until the big ships pass through, and that can sometimes take quite a while. That's one reason why most recreational boats choose to go through the smaller Canadian lock. Unfortunately, it only operates during the daytime. And in contrast, the American locks are open to all traffic 24 hours a day. There are currently 2 working locks on the American side. The one that is used for recreational boats is the 800 feet long MacArthur Lock. It's the one closest to the western shore and the visitor center. The approach in the canal that leads to the MacArthur Lock is and feels long. You pass under a raised railway bridge and a 124-foot high international bridge that spans the river rapids and the locks and link the United States and Canada. Usually, you can expect it'll take you about an hour to pass through the American locks. The time it takes really depends on if the lock is prepared to receive you. So you'll often have to just be patient and sail around in circles while waiting until the water in the lock is at the same level as the river and the lock gates are opened before you're given the green light to enter. We were also waiting for one of the local tour boats to get there. The American Control Center had told us he would go down the lock with our buddy boat, the Annie B. Stone, and us. We had expected that might happen. It's routine for them to have several smaller vessels in the lock at the same time. As soon as we were given the green light, we headed towards the open lock gate and quickly upped the RPMs on the diesel. Before entering the lock, you should get your fenders out on the starboard side of your boat, which is the side that will be in contact with the lock wall when you go down the 21 feet. You don't need to rig dock lines, but when you call into the lock control, you should request 2 lines, and it's always best if you have 2 people on deck to handle the lines. Incidentally, it's also on your starboard side that you will see a large covered visitor stand. It can hold a lot of spectators, so you are likely to lock through with an audience. That may feel a bit distracting when you're locking through for the first time, but just give them a friendly wave and smile at them. You want to give them the impression that boating is fun.
Once you get a grip on the lines, you just have to hold on, be patient, and of course fend your boat off the lock's walls. Usually, the walls of any lock are pretty dirty and slimy, and they are bound to leave some hard-to-clean muck on your fenders. It can't be totally avoided, but Vicki and I always use our boat hooks to push Freelance off the walls as much as we can. It helps some to keep the fenders clean, but it's not perfect. Descending the 21 feet is best described as slow and gentle, and the turbulence in the big lock is actually very minor. By the way, you will find the further your boat goes down in the lock, the more it'll move around in the basin, because the lines will hold your boat less and less tight to the lock's wall. I should mention that you don't turn off your engine while you're in the lock, either on the American or Canadian side. It's really such a big space, and you are in the lock such a short time that carbon monoxide shouldn't be much of a concern. However, if you did turn off your engine and then could not restart it, it would seriously delay lock operations, and that is obviously something to be avoided. When you get to the bottom, you will of course have to wait for the gates to open before you can exit. It'll take a few minutes. You just have to be patient. While everything was getting ready, we first fended Freelance off the wall some so that we would not touch the wall when we put the engine in gear. But we then had to wait for the tour boat and the Annie stone to get underway before us. And that small delay meant we again needed to fend off the wall. It wasn't a big deal, only slowing us down, and when we could see we had enough clearance, I put the gear in forward and headed out towards the St. Mary's River below the rapids. When we passed the massive lock gates, we looked back into the impressive MacArthur Lock. It had been about 50 minutes since we first got to the International Bridge and its approach. That was about the time we had expected from our prior experience with the American lock, assuming, of course, that there weren't any freighters that needed to use the lock. But regardless of the time it actually takes, and whether you choose to use the American or Canadian side of the rapids, it's always an adventure to go through the locks at Sault Ste. Marie. We highly recommend the experience. It's great fun. After you're out of the locks, most people usually head to one of the local marinas. There are two of them just below the locks. The one on the Canadian side is called Bondar, and the one on the American side is called Hemp. Both are fine facilities and are within walking distance from the city's business districts, restaurants, and many local attractions. On this day, we were taking Freelance to Camp Marina, which is located right after the Coast Guard station, because this time Vicki and I intended to continue our cruise on the American side of the international border to the Straits of Mackinac and beyond.
Thanks for watching our program about the American locks at Sault Ste. Marie. We hope you liked it, and please leave your comments, click on like and subscribe. It's free and it helps us a lot.